Welcome to the Gaming Discourse. I am Tyler Frater alongside Richard A. the Cruz
Hello.
and Chief Engineer Lieutenant Commander Connor Frater, who is not here today. It is Monday, December 22nd, 2025. Go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/gaming discourse, patreon.com/the gaming discourse. You can support us for $247, $10. Get your name in the video credits, early access to our videos, access to our Discord server, and more. I want to say off the top of the show, we both kind of heard the news about Vince Zampella. I've read some details, but I'm afraid to say details because in a situation like this, I just don't know what is correct and what is incorrect. So I think really suffice it to say it's insane and it's horrifying, and we wish best to. I don't know anything about Vince Zampella, like if he has kids or whatever, but geez, we're sending.
Which it should be stated. I'm sorry sorry to interrupt it. If you aren't aware, Vince Zampella passed away. We'll just say in a car accident.
Yeah, car accident. Yeah.
Car accident. But yeah, it's very, very sudden, devastating news. I've always kind of my early days of being interested in the gaming industry. Vince Zampella, I would probably say, actually was a bit of the reason why that started, because he was kind of the catalyst of after Modern Warfare 2's explosive reception and popularity. Vince Zampella and Respawn very famously had a falling out. Which I think was the catalyst for everybody's eyes to focus on Activision, to see what they were actively doing in the gaming industry from a damaging standpoint. But yeah, of course, they went on to make Respawn, him and his crew, because I forgot what they were called before that, but they're still around. But yeah. Yeah, devastating news.
Yeah, so we wish the best to whatever family he has. I think he may. I think I want to like I said. I want to say I read that he had kids, but I don't know. So yeah, no easy way to transition out of that, but it's something stunning that happened today that just is kind of insane to just an insane situation. But yeah, so we'll get out of that. We've got lots of news to talk about, a bunch of other stuff to talk about. I am excited to talk about Routine, a game that I've been playing. So I will do that right now because I am, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours into Routine. And I can tell you Routine is one of my favorite horror games of all time. And the thing that's interesting about Routine is it's not all that complicated. It is a run and hide horror game with some light puzzle mechanics. People have compared it to Alien Isolation, and I can see the comparison, but even in comparison to Alien Isolation is much crunchier. You have crafting material, and you have human enemies, and you have guns and Alien. You have a gun, an Alien Isolation, and a flamethrower. So you get weapons. You don't have any of that in Routine. You have an engineer's tool that you can use to kind of defend yourself, but it only stuns enemies. It doesn't kill them. So it just stuns them for a second so you can run away if they spot you or something like that. But Routine takes the basic run and hide formula that has been so, worn out, I think, over the past 15 years, specifically since Amnesia: The Dark Descent. And they just made little changes to it here and there in the level design and how the enemies behave, and then also just the excellent art direction. Routine's art direction is phenomenal. If you recall Alien, right? When you're introduced to the Nostromo in Alien, and it feels cramped and it feels uncomfortable. Part of that is on purpose. The Nostromo is, it's a space truck. They're space truckers, so it's not supposed to be a luxury craft. The thing is industrial. It's economic. There's steam coming out of pipes, and it feels like they're working in a factory. You can see the exploitation in the walls. That's kind of the point. So in that, the Nostromo feels scary. It feels uncomfortable. Routine is a little like that in that a lot of the architecture in Routine feels not necessarily surreal, but it feels cultish in a way. It's kind of tough to describe. It feels like you're walking into a place that has really weird and specific ways of like and procedural ways of handling certain things. So as an example, there is a place in the game where the game is set on the moon, and at first it's set on a resort on the moon, or some kind of, I don't know if it's a resort, it's like a vacation spot on the moon. And you wake up and you're a software engineer that is there to help, you know, maintenance work, whatever. And you wake up and you're all alone, and all the other humans are gone. You don't know what's happened. The space station is abandoned. It's very creepy, and that's how your adventure starts. But the company that you work for has these sections that are meant to help with the like mental stability of their workers. And it feels very dry and uninviting because you go into one room and it's all very analog. It's all, you know, retro horror. So you go into a room that is meant to like calm a worker down if they're overworked or whatever, and a projector turns on and it shows you like these weird shapes, and then it'll say, okay, now what shapes did we show you? And of course, this whole time you hear the projector, right? Like these loud, sudden, very old sounding mechanical sounds, you know, as the projector is going through its different slides and stuff like that. You go into another one where it's like a thing where you have to judge sounds, and of course all the sounds are unsettling and weird, and they come out of different spots in the room. And it's the idea is it's supposed to be this like corporate psychological like relaxation. What's it called when you baseline, you know, like a baseline test. But of course, it comes off as creepy and unsettling and dystopian, right? So that is throughout Routine. A bunch of the architecture and a bunch of just the design of the doors and stuff like that is scary. You know, that when you open a door, it just goes up really quickly, and the way that it opens, you're just there's just a split second where you're terrified of what you're going to see on the other side of the door. There's a little bit of anxiety as it goes up. Because you just have that second there. And so I don't know how much of that, or when you have to crawl through, vents. This is another good example. So in sci-fi, what are walls often made out of? Like, just describe a sci-fi wall to me, Richard. Like, what do you think?
Oh my lord. That
like-
kind of also depends on the type of sci-fi, but I mean, I guess I'm going to say lots of little, you know, LEDs kind of sprinkled in a couple places,
right? Or like metal, right?
Sometimes flat, bare, like metal, like kind of sheet metal-y, you know, stuff like that.
Yes. So
but there's a lot of different types. But yes, that's
so
what I think.
It's stuff that's technological. It's stuff that you have to like. It's stuff that has to resist space somehow, right? Well, in Routine, you'll go into these claustrophobic vents, and it's all made out of concrete, and it doesn't make sense. Now, you're in a building, so it would make sense that they would build a building out of concrete on the moon, but it still just feels it makes you feel uneasy. It makes you feel like you're crawling through a castle and not a space station. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but there's just something about it that's creepy and that works really well when you're doing it. And the sounds are excellent. When you crawl, you can hear your spacesuit like dragging against the ground, and you can hear the click clack of your character's gloves as they're like moving across the ground and carrying. Your character always has their multi-tool in their hands. You can hear it like like every time they like put it on the ground to pull themselves forward. So the sound design is excellent. There's so much in the game that's just excellent. But I want to talk about, without spoiling too much, I want to talk about the enemies, because the game really is a run and hide horror game. Like I said, you can stun an enemy, but you can't defeat them. You can't kill them. You just got to run away from them. And the good news is that they're not that difficult to run away from. They're not that difficult to hide from, and they are loud. So you can always hear their footsteps no matter where they are. But then Routine does a few things that makes them a bit different. So the first enemy you encounter, minor spoilers, the first enemy you encounter are killer robots, right? These big maintenance robots that for some reason they've gone haywire and they're starting to, kill people. Very Alien Isolation, very cliche. Now, of course, their design is creepy. They're these hulking robots that make creepy sounds, and they shine a bright light at you when they detect you. So you look at them, but it's kind of tough to see. They're just coming at you like you're a deer and they're a car, So you kind of just have to run away. But the interesting thing about it is that they are ran by the space station's security system, and the security system can only operate one at a time, like wirelessly. So there's sections of the game where you have to sneak around and solve puzzles and get door codes and whatnot, but there will be like 3 or 4 robots in this entire section, but only one robot will be active at a time, and it can jump to any other robot at any time, right? And what this creates is this really cool dynamic, one where you have to get into a door and there's a deactivated robot and you're like, oh man, do I sneak past it or do I just wait and maybe it'll activate and walk away? And so and it happened to me both ways, where I would sneak past a deactivated robot, it was fine. And then there was times where I was trying to sneak past a deactivated robot, and of course, as soon as I get close, it powers up and I'm like, oh shit, and I'm like sprinting past it. But there's another thing where if the AI knows where you are, let me just describe what it can corral you in a sense, because there's a section of the game that takes place at an L intersection, like 2 hallways, and you have to go, back and forth in this L intersection. And there's if you extend the L, like one, laterally, one vertically, there's a robot in each of those hallways. Well, I was running away from the robot in one of the hallways, and when I turned the corner, the other robot was close by in the other hallway, and that one activated. So I was like, well, shit, I have to run back. So then I ran backward, and as I was running backward, the AI flipped back to the robot that I was initially running away from and activated that one. So it was like in baseball, when a runner is stuck between bases. Yep. It was exactly the same thing. So I was like, oh shit. So I turned around and the AI swapped to the other one and activated that one. And I was like, this is such a cool, like, it was literally Anchorman. I was like, I'm not even mad. I'm impressed. but like, it was so cool because the robots corralled me into the corner, and I had to make like a drastic like jump past one of them to like get out of there. But the AI, instead of just like following me with one robot, it like corralled me using 2 robots and flipping back and forth whenever I like exited its vision cone. I thought that was so cool and that was so dynamic, and it caught me off guard because I didn't even think that would happen, and it did. And I don't know. It's so it takes a simple formula, the run and hide mechanic, and then it just gives it a little twist like that. And that twist I haven't experienced in any other game. And I was like, oh shit, that is awesome. And it feels terrifying because a computer is like, in the universe, a computer is like reacting to you. It's like it understands like what you're trying to do, the in-universe security system. So yeah, then there's another enemy that I think is a really cool enemy. Again, I won't spoil too much, but it's another enemy that I think elicits some comparison to Alien for a few different reasons. But this enemy, again, is loud, walks around, makes lots of noises, so you can always hear them. But every now and then, the enemy will stop and just sit somewhere and wait for you. So it goes from patrolling to guarding. And so you'll hear footsteps and you're like, okay, I have to go over here. I have to punch this code in. Okay, I have to get this code off of this, worker ID card, whatever. And then you don't hear footsteps anymore. And you don't hear the alien making, oh shit, I said it. You don't hear the enemy making noise, right? And you're like, okay, well, what am I gonna do about this? So you have to sneak through the level, and you have to watch for it because it will sit in the corner of rooms and just like without moving, and it'll just sit there like a statue, just waiting for you to walk into its vision. Terrifying when it does that, and terrifying when you can't hear it moving because you just have to peek and see it. And sometimes it's in a place where you have to, like, you can't get past it, so you have to let it see you. You have to run away, hide, and then once it knows it can't find you, it goes back to patrolling. But I've had so much fun with routine. There was one jump scare that I I jumped and I audibly said "holy shit" at the top of my lungs, and that never happens. Jump scares,
You
I'm
seem like
usually
a seasoned veteran, so yeah.
jump scares. I'm usually really good at handling. I can name the jump scares in my life that have really gotten me. Fear, Alma when she's bear crawling through the vents. That one, if I played it right now, if I played it at noon in a gymnasium surrounded by, I don't know, a bunch of people hanging out, it would still terrify me. Like, just because that, there was that one. There was one other. Half-Life Alyx. Not really a jump scare. It was just I turned around and one of the poison head crabs had coiled and was ready to jump as soon as I turned around. So it's like an organic jump scare, not a scripted jump scare, I guess, but still it scared the shit out of me. And then, this one, like these are the three like biggest single scares I can think of off the top of my head that happened like in a moment. But there was a jump scare that it was not cheap. It was excellent. How they built up to it, how they lured you, how the development team lured you into the jump scare, how they made you not predict that it was going to happen. It was just, it was one of those jump scares where, because jump scares can get really tiring, they can get exhausting, especially when they're
Yeah.
leaned on way too hard, because then it just becomes like someone's like banging a cowbell next to your head. It's just, stop it. It's uncomfortable. Now I'm not I'm reacting because it's like painful, or because I'm getting my head punched, not because it's scary. But when there's a good jump scare that is woven into its level design, to a game's level design, after the jump scare, even though I was legitimately terrified, I sort of backed away and I was like, that was good. That was effing good. That was creative. That was well done. So yeah, Routine's one of my, I would say it's becoming one of my favorite horror games ever. And I would love to play through it again. I haven't finished it. I think I'm pretty close to finishing it, but just so much of the game is just, it's not a very complex game. It's very simple. It's run and hide horror. Like I don't want to make it sound like it's brand new, but the level design and the way that they just twist things here and there just a little bit. They just shake up some of these old formulas is excellent. So that's my Routine diatribe. I apologize for going on forever, but I did not expect to. I wasn't sure how I was going to react to Routine, but it's weird because it's refreshing to like play a horror game where I'm like, damn, I really love this, because I feel like it's been a while where I've played like a hard horror game. Yeah.
Yeah, especially in an industry where horror games are a dime a dozen. There's like 3 that release every week on Steam. It's great to find something that really resonates with a lot of the audience. And yeah, since you spoke about it last week, I'm seeing it all over the place now. It's like that. Like a lot more people are talking about it as time goes on, and that's a great thing. That's a great thing.
Yeah, and it's not because when I first played it, I thought it may be because you have this multi-tool thing that you get, you can press buttons on it to do certain things, and it has the whole analog effect, which is really in vogue right now. Where everything is like a VHS tape with buttons and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, so do people just like it because it's Alien Isolation, but with film grain and VHS tracking on all of the TV screens and CRT TVs and stuff like that? I was like, maybe, but the further I got into it, I was like, no, this is legitimately like they have really interesting architecture, really good level design, really good enemy design with, again, little twists that make it feel fresh, even though it's like a relatively well-trodden development strategy. There was another it wasn't really a jump scare. It was more of I guess technically it was a jump scare, but it was kind of a jump scare Easter egg, if that makes sense. There is a section of the game that is pitch black, a long hallway, and I was curious what was at the other end of this hallway, and there was nothing at the other end, so I walked all the way down and there was nothing there. And when I turned around, some TVs turned on. That was it. but it was just funny because there was no reason to go back there. So they put those TVs turning on there just in case anyone was like curious what was at the other end of this hallway, which I thought was great. I thought that was fantastic because the only reason those TVs turned on, there was no other reason but, oh, the player's going back here to explore. Why don't we just put a little funny little jump scare in there? And so, but it wasn't really scary because it was just TVs turned on and it made a quick like sound or whatever. But so yeah, the other jump scare was excellent. Anyway, I'm sorry, Richard.
That's great.
What have you been playing?
Well, you and I did talk about it a little bit, but the listeners haven't heard that I played and beat Mafia: The Old Country.
Oh yes,
Yeah, started playing and beat it. And as I've said before, I'm a big fan of the Mafia series. Played all of them, and this is no exception. And I enjoyed my time with Mafia: The Old Country. It is, once again another game that is on my list throughout all of my gaming time. That is very, very flawed, but yet enjoyable. Mafia: The Old Country, as I said in our discussion at my store, is Hangar 13 is a good studio. They can make a very good game, a game that feels good. But I wonder if they have trouble. Not I wonder, but they do have trouble deciding on what they want to do with this series. They took over for Mafia 3 and they kind of went a little too hard into the Grand Theft Auto route, and they ended up faltering due to kind of landlocking players into having to do racket stuff before you can move on with the actual game. And then on top of that, the gameplay itself was kind of by the numbers. And then they went back. They it's kind of rubber banded backwards, and they said, you know what? Let's remake the original Mafia. Let's stay true to its roots. And they did that, and it worked out very well for them because they added some quality of life features and whatnot. Now we come to Mafia: Old Country, and we have this halfway point for the studio who can't decide on if they want to infuse a little more of Grand Theft Auto into their game or if they want to leave it as a streamlined single player experience. Because we have a game that tells a by the numbers Mafia story, although very entertaining, but yet dangles freedom in front of the player and never gives it to them.
Oh wow,
Mafia: The Old Country.
I really like the way you put that. Sorry, I really like the way you put that.
Mafia: The Old Country once again provides the story, and they railroad you hard into completing this story. More so to the fact that within the first hour, you are taught, hey, this is how you upgrade stuff. Here's we got the mission is, we got to go to this guy to fix the car. Hey, guess what? He actually is also a place where you can buy new weapons. You can get new upgrades to your vehicles, et cetera, et cetera. But yet, in a large majority of the missions, I'd probably say about 80% of them, as soon as you even veer off of the path, an iota, you get the big, hey, return to the mission. You got 10 seconds left, to get it done. And so you're brought back to where you're supposed to be, and you're not allowed to go any further. I think the entire game, I think I spent around 15 hours or less in Mafia: The Old Country. I was able to, as far as I'm aware, be able to explore only twice in the entire game, and go back to upgrade and get things done. The very big downside of that is that even when I did upgrade things, when I bought new guns, when I upgraded my rosary, which is very cool, the tie-in with Catholicism for the Mafia. You get a rosary that you add beads to it that give you better health or better reload options, more grenades you can carry, etc. Those amounted to nothing because a large majority of the game I didn't even need them. Yeah. Like there's no discernible difference on if I can just shoot a guy in the head and he goes down, no matter what weapon I'm using.
Yep.
There's no reason for it. So I think we have a studio that wants to do more but due to the hard lessons that they've learned, they aren't committing to it fully. And that's a shame, because I think that we are um, we are we are wanting another Grand Theft Auto. Saints Row isn't around anymore. Sleeping Dogs isn't around anymore. Mind's Eye was a complete failure. There's something that is missing, and we
That's a
can't
really
have
good point. Yeah.
and we can't have Grand Theft Auto ruling it every time. And I think that studios are scared to create something similar to it. But even with all of its downsides, another downside is, man, I hate old racing. I hate racing in old eras because, well, first off, it's very unrealistic. Cars do not go this fast. but secondly, they did this thing to where there are several races that you have, one on horseback and one in car, that no matter what, you win. Like it funnels you into winning. But the second race with the car that you have, there's an entire conversation right before where it's like, hey, we have some of our guys up in these areas that will tell you where shortcuts are. I'll let you know when you get there so that we could take these shortcuts if you're losing. And the problem is, when you're driving in these races, the audio cues come up way too late. And so sometimes I would get the audio cues of when these characters were after I needed to turn where I needed to, or what have you. But at the end of the race, if I'm going to win anyways, once again, it doesn't matter. But of course, they're just like a small portion, very, very small portion of the game that's forgettable. But even with all of its downsides, I found myself once again very enthralled by a traditional mafia story. And despite its cliched, presentation, I found that the first meeting between the love interest and the main character was a very genuine one. And you can immediately see how these two would connect with each other. And of course, that becomes the anchor of the entire story, much like a lot of other mafia stories. A character who has no business being in the mafia coming into the mafia and what he does with that as time goes on. There are fates of certain characters who is coming, because that's just how a mafia story works. But yet it doesn't make it any less sad when it does happen. And once again, like other mafia stories, Mafia: The Old Country is a tragedy. And I think that towards the end of the game, I was very satisfied with my gameplay. But I do think if I'm sure you're going to play it, or maybe you'll play it one day, maybe you won't, who knows? But I do feel that if somebody were to ask me, hey, should I play it? I'd probably just tell them, just watch it and just watch it because you'd probably get the
similar
experience about it. But I am glad that they had another shot at creating a mafia game. It seems the general consensus is that the public likes it, and it was released at a budget price. It was another $50 game this year. I think we had 3 major releases that were $50. I think South Midnight was one, Expedition 33 is the other, Mafia: The Old Country was the other. And I think that was a very good decision on their part to make it a little less than a full price $70 game, because the pill is easier to swallow at that point. But yeah, I like my time with Mafia: Old Country. It does have shortcomings, but it is a very good 7 out of 10.
Alrighty. With that, we will hit the ad and talk news. Thanks for listening. If you like our content, please consider subscribing or leaving a like and comment. You can find us at patreon.com/thegamingdiscourse. And our tiers are $2, $4, $7, and $10 and include getting your name in the video credits, early access, and access to our Discord server. Okay, so I wanted to discuss, we've discussed this before, but generative AI in video games, because it's reaching a point now where I think it's reaching a level that I don't think it has reached before, at least on a mainstream level. So the reason we're talking about this is Jason Schreier spoke with Sven Vinke, I think it's Vinke, CEO of Larian Studios, where he talked about a bunch of stuff, but also specifically how the studio is using generative AI in its development process. I'm going to read a quote here from Jason Schreier's story. Quote, under Vinca, Larian has been pushing hard on generative AI, although the CEO says the technology hasn't led to big gains in efficiency. He says there won't be any AI-generated content in Divinity, which is the studio's upcoming game. Everything is human actors. We're writing everything ourselves. But the creators often use AI tools to explore ideas, flesh out PowerPoint presentations, develop concept art, and write placeholder text. The use of generative AI has led to some pushback at Larian, but I think at this point, everyone at the company is more or less okay with the way we're using it, Vinca said. Since then, Vinca has released a few different statements. There was backlash, people reacting. He released a few different statements on IGN and Twitter. I'm going to read a portion of each one. So we'll start with the one from a statement he gave to IGN. Quote, since concept art is being called out explicitly, we have 23 concept artists and have job openings for more. These artists are creating concept art day in and day out for ideation and production use. Everything we do is incremental and aimed at having people spend more time creating. Any machine learning tool used well is additive to a creative team or individual's workflow, not a replacement for their skill or craft. We are researching and understanding the cutting edge of machine learning as a tool set for creatives to use and see how it can make their day-to-day lives easier, which will let us make better games. And then on Twitter, after more pushback and more reaction, he said, quote, I was asked explicitly about concept art. Did I? Yeah, here we go. I was asked explicitly about concept art and our use of Gen AI. I answered that we use it to explore things. I didn't say that we use it to develop concept art. The artists do that. They are indeed world-class artists. We use AI tools to explore references, just like we use Google and art books. At the very early ideation stages, we use it as a rough outline for composition, which we replace with original concept art. There is no comparison. Okay, so he also said in that one, I forget the exact quote, but he was a little exacerbated at some point. He said,
Yes.
like, holy fuck, guys, or something like that.
Yeah.
So I think he had enough of people on Twitter. But so yeah, in other news, we also have Sandfall Interactive is being disqualified from the indie game show because they had generative AI in their game early on. They used it in the process. It was patched out quickly. There's just today there was a controversy about Battlefield 6. I have found images in Battlefield 6 that I think are clearly generative AI. If there's a multiplayer map that has like a mural of a jazz band, and if you look at the mural, it has clear signs of generative AI. There's a symbol that's only half a symbol for no reason. So it's like it's either generative AI or somebody didn't do their job. So I assume Gen AI is in Battlefield 6. Yeah, we had a similar controversy about Call of Duty. So it seems like with a lot of major releases, this year we had that conversation, and then we're having conversations with people talking about game development and stuff like that. So yeah, what have you seen? What do you think? This can go a lot of different ways. We've talked about it before, but I actually have some new thoughts. But I'll let you say what you're thinking first, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's a very big story, and it's kind of a realization that I think the general gaming public who consumes this stuff both frequently and infrequently are kind of having to forcefully understand what's going on. And ever since Sven made his comments, we have had, of course, you mentioned Expedition 33's developer, Sandfall. Wait,
yeah, Sandfall Interactive.
Yeah, Sandfall Interactive.
I'm gonna say yes.
Came out, and they actually, I think today I saw a reiteration of the fact that those AI images that they had were from Unreal themselves as like a base beginner like thing, but they patched it out quickly, as you said earlier.
I want to say they were, I read that they said they were placeholders or something. So.
Yeah, they're placeholders. Yeah, and then there was another dev. There were a lot of there were a lot of users on Twitter specifically. I saw that supposedly were game artists, and they all, a lot of them unanimously were like, I hope you guys know that this is what we do. Like, everyone is doing it. The main three people, or sorry, the main two people, Larian and Sandfall, are the ones who quote unquote got caught. And we say that because we're already like villainizing this. And I'm not here to kind of like debate on the ethicalness of whatever they're doing. But a lot of comparison has been made to just simply going on to Pinterest or Google Images and just being like, hey, I need something that kind of looks like this. Can you break me some? And then the artist's job is to create something out of that. So whether that is a good thing or not, it's very the consumer is taking it differently. The consumer is now, the assumption is, well, if you're using it for that, what else are you using it for that you aren't telling us? And I think that's where the fear comes from, because we've already had so many scares from other studios in the past. I know, I think we'll talk about a little bit here. Arc Raiders.
Yeah.
Arc Raiders uses generative, or what I assume is generative AI voice lines, which they had already a baseline. They paid actors for baseline lines, and then they are creating new lines from those actors' voices, which now, after these comments from Sven and others, there's now a discussion of, well, what's the difference between what Arc Raiders is doing compared to like what like Siri does, like something that Siri does, or like whatever Amazon Echo does and stuff like that. So now there's like, somewhat justifications of these things, but it's very tough, because I think that, yeah, the AI that's being used in the pre-production phase of games, I hope is the only thing they're doing and not as damaging as we may see from generative AI itself. But it's a very large, and I can only say so much, because once again, I'm not an industry artist,
Yeah.
and I don't
Yep.
develop games, so I can't,
Yeah. I think
I can only say what I assume from what people are explaining.
yeah, and I think so. A lot of people are encountering this now because because like Larian's a well-loved studio and stuff like that, but even then, like I've seen on Reddit like a lot of posts about generative AI, and it's gotten to the point now where I feel like we're reaching the zone where people are now angry at other people for being angry about generative AI, like that internet
Yes.
area where people are just,
Yeah.
and we're like gliding past the issue. Now it's just people are being angry at people that are being angry.
Yes.
So which it
Very
was
right.
just like its own phenomenon, I guess. But I do think like if you whittle it down, there are two sort of main issues here, and that's like what the end user sees, and then the game development process itself. And I cannot speak to the game development process. I cannot speak to, I don't know, what is an ethical usage of generative AI. I have read that is it possible? I have read that it is possible that if you have a large language model that is only trained on your own content, then you're not, stealing copyrighted books from the internet. Sam Altman isn't scooping up YouTube videos, or Google, Claude isn't, I think it's Claude, is that? I don't remember. Isn't scooping up YouTube videos, and you're not basing, your generative AI output on that. You're basing it on things you already put in, which disconnects you from like using other people's copyrighted work and stuff like that. So that's just one example of like, okay, if a studio is using generative AI to do something and they're using an in-house large language model or an in-house server or whatever, and everything that their model is trained on or takes from is stuff that they own, that they themselves already created, how do we think about that? How do we navigate that? I think that is different from some guy or girl on Steam who needs, dialogue for a character, so they go to ChatGPT and say, write me a response to these questions, you know, and they just
which
copy and paste. Like, I think there is a distinction there, right?
I do think yes, because I'm not here to like question anybody's intelligence, but there is I don't have a good like analogy, but the folks at Larian, the folks at all of these game studios who may or may not be using their in-house stuff, they know how to use it. They know how to create it. They know exactly what they need from it.
That's a good point. Yeah, yeah.
Whereas, yes, the guys you see on Twitter who post 30 seconds of look at this game I'm creating in Chat GPT because I said please do this. Don't know what they're doing.
There's no baseline there. There's no like
because it's easy. Yes.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, once again, the game developers are creating a modular item that they said to it, I need you to do this and only this, and nothing else. And so, yeah, I think that, and I've read some of this as well. I don't know, maybe it does make me feel better that Larian will say, hey, we do have this this AI in-house that our own artists have fed into it and they're okay with feeding into it, that it creates what we want from these artists only. And if like Larian says they have been paid for it and they're fine with it and they're whatnot, like that's a whole other discussion. But yeah, it is for me a little more comforting than some schmuck on Twitter who types up a prompt and we lose 30,000 gallons of water because of it.
Yes, that's a good, yeah. And I think that's another good point too, is like the source that it's coming from. So when it comes to the game development process, I think that's complicated. I don't know what I don't know. I've never worked with concept artists. I don't know the process. I don't know if there is a way where you could have like a generative AI image that would actually help you in the process. I don't know. I have read stories where it seems like concept artists didn't like that. I have seen concept artists that seem like they don't mind it. I don't know. So it's complicated. It's all over the place. It's unregulated. You know, it's kind of one of the big issues right now, which is why I think a reason that people recoil against this so much is this kind of thing really flourishes if, I don't know, it feels like in places where that are adjacent to like reactionary politics and places that don't respect art, you know, like those guys on Twitter that are like, look at this game I'm making, and it's complete nonsense. But it's just, you know, it has nothing to do. It's very similar to the NFT craze where the NFTs had nothing to do with the art that was being made. It was all about making these speculative assets that you could then use to make money and jump out of the airplane. You know, it had nothing to do with the monkey itself or the image or the identity that you know, supposedly got from the image that you had generated from this this network or whatever. It had nothing to do with any of that. All it had to do with was you were making an asset out of thin air that hopefully would increase in value that you could sell, and then hopefully you could turn that into USD. That was about it. Yeah. It wasn't any more complicated than that. So, but I do think that when it comes to the end user, that's where we can have solid opinions. Because yeah, I can tell you that it's like, okay, so I don't know, if a concept artist comes up to me and they explain their process and they're like, this is where I use generative AI, this is why I'm comfortable with it, this is what it helped me do, I made this. I don't know, you know, to me that's like, okay, yeah, that's legitimate. Like, I don't know anything about generating concept art, making concept art, so okay. But the larger thing for me is like when I've played a few games that have generative AI in them, more than a few. Like one of them is the Outlast Trials, which is the third or fourth Outlast game. It's co-op. It's very neat. You go into these like you have to go complete a quest, or not a quest, a mission. There's enemies that chase after you. It's very fun, but there are areas in the game where you have to go into like a fake courthouse. And on the walls of these courthouses are paintings of judges, like portraits of judges. And it's clearly generative AI. And so in my mind, it's like, could you not have paid an artist to just draw you 5 portraits of a judge that then you could hang around these hallways? Why do you need these portraits to be generative AI? What is that? That doesn't add anything. Because now when I see it, all I think to myself is, that's just a shitty generative AI image of a judge, right? There is no like thought put into that besides, we want a picture of a creepy judge here, chat GPT or whatever. So that's the kind of thing where it's like, I don't see a reason for that, especially for a game that has been as successful as Outlast Trials. Can you really not pay an artist to draw you a couple portraits of creepy judges and then hang them up throughout the game? Because again, if it's so unimportant that you just need to fill space, that you can just fill it up with something that an image generator made, then why am I wasting my time looking at the details of your level? You know, to me that feels like you're wasting my time. So I am someone that will look at details that, you know, I was just talking about routine and routine's architecture and shit like that. So it's like, you know, if it's not important to you, then don't put it in the game. But if you're putting it in the game, then I think you're doing it just because you want to have something there, but you don't want to put in the work to do so. And that's the region where things start to bother me. Another example is generative AI voice lines. Like, I don't know, is it wrong to have if you have a voice actor voice a bunch of lines and then they're done and they're out and they sign a contract that says, if you use generative AI, you can, but you have to pay me this much for a session. Okay. And then a month later, you're like, oh shoot, the voice actor didn't say the name of this gun. And you give them a call and it's like, hey, we need you to come down to the studio so you can say you can say ray gun. I have the ray gun. And they're like, oh, I can't because I'm working on this other project for 2 months. And you're like, well, shit, we ship in a month. So what do we do? It's like, okay, can we make a line where the generative AI just says, I got the ray gun? And it's like, okay, fine. You know, if it's something where there are circumstances that are so wild that it's just easier to do that, I don't know. And again, you have an in-house model where you're not stealing other people's voices and the artist is being paid for their work based on a contract that has hopefully been negotiated with a union. Like, I don't know. I can't sit here and say that that's wrong. That is up to actors. That is up to unions. But what I can say is that if your game is full of voice lines that just suck, and I can tell that they're generative AI and they don't need to be there, that's different, because at that point it's just like, again, you don't need any of this stuff. If you just if you just want voice lines but you're unwilling to pay for them, then what you're doing is exploitation. Then what you're doing is wrong. A good example is like, and I've come across a few games where the voice acting has been generative AI, but it's like, you don't need voice acting, because me knowing it's generative AI is just lowering. I would rather have cheesy voice acting than generative AI voice acting. Cheesy voice acting is okay. It's fine. I would rather have that than something I instantly tell is toneless, tone deaf, monotone generative AI. And at the end of the day, a lot of video games are perfectly fine with characters that just make sounds for their voices, Animal Crossing, and it's fine. It's iconic, You don't need to give Tom Nook a voice. It's not going to improve the game. It's not going to make it more immersive. It's not going to make it better. It's not going to do anything except just make people groan because, oh, that sounds like generative AI. So the other issue is just like, why it doesn't make things better. So why are you adding it to the game? And if you're adding it because you think the game needs it, well, then you think it's important. And at that point, you should probably pay somebody to add it to your game properly, is what is sort of my thought process there. So I think, so those are the two distinctions. It's like, I don't know, when it comes to the workflow, I'm not gonna freak out because I don't know what I don't know. Game development is massive, it's sprawling, it's opaque, it's complex. I'm not gonna point at someone like Sven Vinka, who knows light years more than I do about game development, and say you shouldn't do these things, right? At the same time, right. I think we both agree that we don't want dialogue that is just copy and paste from ChatGPT. There is a distinction there. And then there's the end user side of things where it's like, you know, yeah, if I see paintings on a wall in a castle somewhere and they're just generative AI, then that's going to make me mad because it's just a generative image and it sucks and I can tell instantly, and that bothers me. It bothers me that you couldn't take the, that you were willing to put in the effort to give, to put a, that you thought it was important enough to have something there, but you didn't think it was important enough to put work into the thing that you put there, and that sucks. So yeah, so that's the distinction that I think is important to draw here, and that's what I think people are like navigating and having trouble with, because people already don't like generative AI for a lot of reasons. I think a lot of people are exposed to it through TikTok and other bullshit like that, where people put out slop, and then it's like, why am I watching these videos? Or they learn a video is fake. And so they get tired of having to navigate an internet in a world where it's like they don't know what's real, they don't know what's fake, or they see something that they think is neat, and then they learn it was just a generative image and no one actually made it, and it was just it's just this other made on this other bullshit. And I think people just have their defenses up and they get tired of that shit. So when they hear that, and yes, they also associate generative AI with the tech sector, which is ran by a bunch of fucking man babies, right?
Yeah,
People
too true.
like
Yeah.
people like Mark Zuckerberg, or people like Sam Altman, or people like fucking Peter Thiel and the other guy, the CEO of Palantir, who had like the weird speech the other week or whatever, and then that's a whole different thing. I can't get off track. But the point is, you associate it with like the tech bro Palmer Luckey. I have my private security company that I'm working on, but I'm also like cool because I have weird hair. Like all those annoying fucking douchebags. And this is their thing right now. And then you see Larian is doing it, and yeah, it makes you angry because it's like, why are you helping prop up this technology? But again, I do think it's more complicated than that. And the other thing is, I don't know like what the distinction is between machine learning and generative AI. As far as I understand it, machine learning is a broader term that's not necessarily generative AI. Just like how procedural generation is not generative AI. There are distinctions there in the technology. Generative AI, I think, is a specific technology with like a specific architecture that requires certain, like requires GPUs and certain hardware to operate in a certain way. Where procedural generation and stuff like that and machine learning is broader and covers more areas that are less controversial and are much older. So that's another area. We're dealing with technology here that all the terms are really broad and cover lots of areas, but it still scares people because they think Gen AI and they see Mark Zuckerberg and they see the fucking images that the White House posts on Twitter, and they're just like, I don't like this. I don't like that the world is becoming fake, or that corny conservatives can go, hey, we made a dumb, what is essentially a 2025 version of like the Minions, conservative Minion memes that you see on Facebook that are like 15 years old, like fucking shit like that. So I think that drudges up a lot of anger. And I get it. But yeah, so there isn't an easy answer here. I don't know. But of course, a lot of this conversation is happening on Twitter, so people are talking past one another, and which is why I don't understand why anyone is ever on Twitter. No, nothing has ever been accomplished on Twitter, ever. I don't want to hear it. No conversation is ever worthwhile. Nothing has ever happened, and it's just a place that Nazis congregate now. So why are we going on there and making fun of like how people act and shit? Get off, read a book, to do something else, play a fucking video game, write a review. Don't like, yes, sometimes people are going to post dumb shit on Twitter, but it's just like, why are we, we can't have these conversations there. I'm sorry. Especially when in the comments is a bunch of people from like Indonesia and Czechoslovakia that are like saying, I love Trump and shit like that. Like, just get off Twitter. Anyway, okay, I'm sorry. Is there anything else you would like to say about this?
No, that's all has been said.
Okay. Moving on to another video game controversy. Naughty Dog. I was going to say is back to crunch, but I think more accurately was back to crunch. This is another report from Bloomberg's. Bloomberg's Jason Schreier, Naughty Dog developers are working mandatory overtime, or were working mandatory overtime to finish a demo for Intergalactic: The Heretic Prophet, which is slated for release in mid-2027, which I did not know until I read this story. Just reading from the story here, quote, "For the past 7 weeks, the Santa Monica-based studio behind The Last of Us has been pushing its staff to work long hours to get ready for an upcoming review of the demo by its parent company, according to people familiar with the situation. Starting in late October, staff were asked to begin working a minimum of 8 extra hours a week and logging their overtime in an internal spreadsheet," said the people who asked not to be identified because they aren't authorized to speak publicly. This overtime period was an attempt to get the production back on track after several missed deadlines. The employees were instructed not to work for more than 60 hours a week. Staff were also told to return to the office 5 days a week for this period, up from 3 previously, sending some employees scrambling to find alternative care arrangements for children and pets. And then, yeah, by the time the story was published, I believe that overtime window had been finished, had been completed. So crunch began in October, late October, went through November, and then ended, I guess, up until, I want to say this story came out like a week ago or so. So about 2 months, of 60-hour work weeks, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, I don't have a ton to say on this. I do have a few interesting thoughts, or a few things that I think are interesting. But yeah, what do you see here? What do you think?
Oh, the game industry is fucking weird, man. Sorry for cussing, but well, I know I cuss all the time. But anyways,
why did you as if I haven't?
Right? Yeah, I know. Right? Exactly.
Watch your fucking mouth, Richard.
Shit! Fuck! God damn it. So, yeah. The Naughty Dog announces Intergalactic and gives us, mid 2027 release. Several years away, or a year and a half away now.
Yeah.
Year and a half, 2 years, whatever. And I understand that when you announce a game early, you're feeling for hirees, or you're trying to get funding from your shareholders or whatever you do. But I am trying to refrain, because we always say this, and I'm going to always stress it when we start talking about stuff like this. I am not a developer. I do not know what is going on. But what have you been doing since Last of Us Part 2? Like, what exactly has been going on? I know that they were making the Last of Us online. I forgot what it was called.
Yeah. Yes.
And that fell through. But that was almost around 2 years ago now, I think. So what has been going on since then? I know there's writing to be involved. I know there's concept art, all that stuff to be involved. But you come out, you announce a game for 2027. You give us a very slick looking trailer. Obviously, filming is either in the midst or over. Voice acting's already done, I assume. Now it's just making the game. I find it baffling to waste your staff's energy and time to produce a demo for a game. Because the way it is worded, and I'm probably not taking it correctly from the from my literacy of this story, but it sounds like I don't want to say it does. I don't want to say it sounds like they don't know what they're doing, but I have to ask, what are they doing? Because if they don't have a demo, if they don't have something good to show, whoever is trying to watch this, then yeah, what's going on?
If I could interject, because so I do think that we could use this same statement for a lot of studios, and again, it's one of those things where I don't necessarily think that it's anyone's fault. It's more of just a systemic failure, right? Like, why don't we have another Elder Scrolls game yet? And Todd Howard could sit down and go, Tyler, look at this schedule. Look at here, here, and here. We've been working on this. We hired this many people. It takes this long. And it's just like, okay, yeah, just from a logistical standpoint, it's undeniable that if I tried to reorganize this schedule, I couldn't do it. But that's also part of the problem, is that we have schedules that have ballooned to the point where, we're getting an Elden Ring or a Skyrim sequel and a GTA 5 sequel, 10 years after the previous game, more than 10 years after the previous games launched. So it's like, while it is a problem that you can't just, cut things away and solve, it's a systemic problem that things have ballooned to this point, if that makes sense. So I think it's the same thing with Naughty Dog, where it's like, yeah, I don't necessarily think it's anyone's fault. Maybe you could maybe point at like executives and making choices that demand like high fidelity and larger ideas and other shit like that. But it's a systemic failure. And I think the other thing is, so I want to point out that this said, the crunch was for a upcoming review of the demo by its parent company, right? By its parent company. So I assume that means either PlayStation or Sony, right? Which means
right. Yeah.
I'm gonna assume PlayStation. PlayStation executives are coming down to Santa Monica and they're going to take a look at what progress you have made, right? And that is interesting to me because we have heard this story a couple different times. We heard the same thing with the new BioShock game, that there was an executive review, they didn't like it, so then people got laid off and it was rebooted, and the guy from Diablo was like hired over, I forget his name, and so things like were changed up. And I find that fascinating because to me, the story here that I wish we would get more details on is, well, who are these people that are doing this review? On what basis are they making their review, and who are they? Because if it is a bunch of corpos who are coming down from Sony to check things out, then I think, we talk about the systemic problems of the games industry and how hard it is to blame specific people or like try and, draw a circle around a certain part in the machine that is malfunctioning. But I think if we got names and we knew, okay, Tom, Dick, and Harry are going down to Santa Monica on this day, and they announced it in October. And so in October, Neil Druckmann was like, shit, we're going to have a demo. So then that began this domino effect where they're meeting a deadline, they have crunch. And so that's, and so little things like that are the reason that the schedule gets so bogged down. And it's like, bam, I want those names, and I want to know why they run the studio this way, because it's clearly not helping. And that could be one of the ways that the systemic failure is actively happening, because of little tiny scheduling decisions like this, where you have a bunch of corpos come down to visit, they're expecting some kind of review, and you have to put on a good show. It was the same thing with Anthem. If you remember, Anthem, failed a demo. Patrick Soderlund didn't like it, and then the studio, BioWare, had to crunch to fix that demo, and then Patrick Soderlund did like it, and then Patrick Soderlund left BioWare. Don Matrick meme, my work here is done, and he went and did Arc Raiders in the finals, I think is the team he's at now. So he went and found fucking free to play live service success elsewhere before making Arc Raiders, but different discussion. So it's like, why is that happening? And then on what basis are they making those decisions? On what basis do they understand that they are throwing a wrench into the schedule when they do that? To me, I don't know. To me, that's the crunchy part of the story that I wish we would have more details on. And maybe that I don't know, maybe it is just that, that it's just a massive bloated project, and the executives aren't necessarily doing anything wrong. I don't know. Maybe it's just Herman Holst by himself, and he's just doing his job, checking in on the internal studios, and you can't expect him not to do that. So yeah, it could be something where it's not really the fault of the review itself. It's just the thing is bloated. So the cause is elsewhere, not necessarily in the executive review itself. But luckily this crunch, while bad, does not sound like the crunch of the past, where it was like people didn't go home and shit like that. Naughty Dog is famously a company that I don't know if they still do, but used to, it was like they would seek out workaholics. That was kind of the culture they wanted to build. And so that produced some great games, but it also produced a work culture that I think burnt people out, and where crunch was endemic to the culture. So,
Right.
Is it still like that? I don't know. But the details here are definitely not as bad as some of the stories that we had back when we started this podcast, where we were hearing about, people having anxiety attacks and stuff at work, although I'm sure that still happens in different places of the industry. But so yeah, that was sort of the thing that caught my eye, and that's the thing that I wish we would get names on and more details on. Because if the story was Corpo 1, 2, and 3 are going down to Naughty Dog, Corpo 1 used to work at Procter & Gamble, Corpo 2 used to work at Walmart, and Corpo 3 was at Sony before transferring over. And so you got these three C-suite executives who have never held a controller, and they're throwing a wrench into the schedule because they want to do a review, and they're coming down to share their opinions on something they don't understand. Then the story is different, and then we can identify why something like this is suddenly happening and why it's taking so long. We have a specific cause. But without those details, we don't know, and it's just, again, a giant systemic problem that we can only speculate in the abstract about, which sucks. But it is frustrating. I share in your frustration, though, because, this is happening everywhere. It's like, and it can't be sustainable. We can't go another 10 years for GTA. We can't go another 10 years without an Elder Scrolls. We're going to go, it's coming up on, or it has been 10 years since Fallout 4. When did Fallout 4 come out? 2015?
15 or 16, yeah.
Yeah, so it's going to be 10 years since the last Fallout game, and there has never been higher demand for a Fallout game. And of course, unless you call it Fallout 76, single player Fallout game there. So it's like, that systemic failure, those elongated budgets and long schedules just can't happen anymore. Does generative AI help you with that? I don't know. Some developers have said it can, but I have no idea. It doesn't seem like it would be that. It seems like a problem that's so big that one magical wand isn't going to take care of it. But is there anything else you would like to say about this?
No, I mean, I truly hope that Intergalactic turns out to be, this isn't a sign of like anything bad going on or anything.
No,
it's just
so.
Worrisome because when you have, there's already a shift in the mindset of the consumer for video games, especially with how things have been this year. No one wants to pay $70 for a game. If it's worth it, they will, they want quality. People are tired of glitchy games. They're tired of microtransactions, tired of a lot of stuff. But the one of the biggest things is providing a game that won't take 10 years to make. To attach to your point, we can't wait 10 years for a GTA, and we're coming up on 16 now. Yeah. 16 years since Grand Theft Auto 5. We can't keep waiting that long for these. People are going to be over it. We can't wait so long for another Halo. We can't wait so long for another Fable. We can't wait so long for all these franchises we like. And with the advent of, sorry, I said advent, but no, with the realization that small companies like Sandfall, Compulsion is a bit smaller, but when they make these games that are really good and they're sold for cheaper, people are going to flock to that. And then, studios like Naughty Dog are going to be left holding the bag because they can't get their game out quick enough that it's going to recoup those losses. So yeah.
Yep, and I'm sure this is something we will talk about again. Was that your cat in the background?
Yeah, I apologize. He's being moody.
No, it's okay, because I was gonna say she's probably like, "Shut the hell up and give me food," which you'd
be right.
I understand.
They already have food, buddy, and it needs more.
Yeah, well, those are that's how cats work, I guess. Follow us youtube.com/gaming discourse, patreon.com/the gaming discourse. working on some stuff right now. I didn't have an update this past week. I'll have an update coming up and more to say. But yeah, follow us there. And I don't know what our plans are for next week. I'll discuss. But I think we will have a show next week. If not, I'll let everybody know on Patreon. Have a good night. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.